Hello, my name is Samah Rawahi. Welcome to Marrakesh Coffee, our brand new talk series marking 30 years of the agreement establishing the WTO. I will be inviting trade experts over a cup of coffee to discuss the past 30 years and what lies ahead for the WTO. Today, I'm meeting my first guest, Gabrielle Marceau, from the WTO's Economic Research and Statistics Division. I'm super excited to hear all her fascinating stories and her views on various trade topics. But first things first, coffee.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you as our first guest. How are you doing?
I'm very well, just coming back from holidays.
Oh, nice. I think we can start our conversation today by talking a little bit about the room that we're in today, Room X. I know there's a lot of history here, so maybe you can start off and share a bit of the room.
Yes, initially this room, in the time when the International Labour Organization was here, was the room of the DG. And there are two things that have always impressed me in this room. First, you have a few zodiac signs, or what seems to be zodiac signs, 12 of them. Okay. And there's also a little hole in the wall where we were told the secretary and the then DG of the ILO were exchanging letters and things like that. Now it's a room for discussion. There was a beautiful piano. So yes, it's an outstanding room of that period.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's fascinating. So with all your knowledge about Room X, I'm sure there's a lot of stories you can tell us about your time in the WTO, and we really want to hear those. So maybe you can share with us, how has your journey been with the organization so far? Maybe what are your earliest memories of the WTO?
My first memory when I came into what was the GATT, and when I decided to apply for working here, was in '94. I came for a visit and I met Hans-Peter Werner, who was then a journalist here, who told me that the GATT was changing, dispute settlement was starting, and the staff were going to assist the judges, the panelists. And then I decided, wow, I'd love to work in international dispute settlement. And I decided to apply for a PhD in the field. And the other beautiful memory I have is when I walked up the beautiful stairs of the main hall of the GATT, and I thought, wow, I can't believe that one day I may work here. When I came for an interview in June '94, and then I arrived for a job for working on 11 September '94. So this is back when I first met the GATT WTO more than 30 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Now maybe we can shift and talk about the present a little bit.
Yes.
You know, there's been a lot of discussion lately about re-globalization.
Yes.
It would be very interesting to hear your take, or what does this concept really mean to you when someone comes and says, what does re-globalization mean?
So I think re-globalization is really an accurate concept on what is happening. Globalization started years back, even with industrialization. Now with digitalization, we cannot stop this interconnection between governments, between states, not only to produce and trade, but in general exchanges. Re-globalization, to me, this concept I think invented by our DG Ngozi, means a new take on this new reality. And I think it became very obvious, in particular with the COVID. When DG Ngozi arrived here and some countries asked her, and she did, to work on equity in the distribution of vaccine, trying to find solutions to the lack of vaccine, where to produce them, when she created those new networks with IGOs, relevant IGOs, World Health, but also IMF, World Bank, and others, when she involved the private sector. All these are expressions of efforts to deal with re-globalization. So there's no way we can stop globalization. The issue is how to handle it so it really helps human beings and ultimately animals and plant, but life on the planet. So this is to me what re-globalization is all about. And it's the essence of the WTO work nowadays. Make trade work for human beings.
True, true. That's so true. Thank you so much for sharing. Very interesting perspective, Gabrielle. Considering what you've just shared in terms of reglobalization and some of the things that WTO has been working on and trying to shift the idea of how we do trade, where do you see the WTO in the next 30 years?
I think the WTO, funny enough, I know I'm a staff, but I'm also professor at university, and WTO, in my view, is, if anything, becoming more important. Because traditionally people would see the WTO or GATT just about this trade where some exporters make money and this connotation of multinational sometimes abusing and all that. I think that with COVID, but not only COVID, when we had the financial crisis in 2008, the WTO also took initiatives of this type. But now, with climate change, with those enormous threat of pandemics, biodiversity, all these new crises or realities point to the WTO as an essential forum and mechanism to ensure that things continue to roll. That is, yes, we need vaccine for the pandemic, but these vaccines not only need to be produced with items from 5, 10, 15 different countries, they need to be re-exported everywhere. And this means cross-border. And WTO is the international organization that is dealing regularly with problem of cross borders. It shows with climate change. For years, governments here try to talk about climate change and trade. Not only trading green goods, but ensuring that everybody share the responsibility and the benefit. Well, recently, at the COP28, for instance, it was decided that the WTO and other international organizations would get together and try to understand how to price carbon. This is at the center of our survival on this planet. WTO is leading this group of IGOs. This is just one example, together with the leading role of the WTO during the pandemic. These are examples of the central role of WTO rules. WTO as a form of governance, that's another thing that has evolved. WTO for years here was known not only, but mainly, or a lot, about its dispute settlement system. It's still important, but the governance role of the WTO, a forum where countries talk about their problem, where experts suggest solutions, this is growing in importance in new areas, such as trade and climate change.
Very interesting insight. So I think, I guess our main takeaway from that would be in the next 30 years, we see the WTO in the leading position when it comes to different issues and matters related to trade.
Leading position also as a form of governance. Discussions, finding solutions, of course, but talking.
Yes.
This is why this room, I thought it was very wise of you to choose this room, because today this room is a negotiation room, or a room where countries can come and talk. In fact, when I take the students for a visit of the WTO, I show them different room of different size, different number. I show them room WTO where chairs are face to face. This is quite different from the UN. Why? Because what we do in this building is talk.
That's true. True. And sometimes the thing that you need to do at first is actually talk and bring people at the table. And
to understand their problem, share experiences, suggest best practices. So that's new. It always existed, but the proportion and the importance has increased importantly.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle. So we are getting to our last question. You might be familiar with the phrase, the spirit of the Marrakesh, which is the name of our campaign celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Marrakesh Agreement. It represents the spirit of collaboration and also optimism embodied by the negotiators of the Uruguay round, which ultimately led to the creation of the only international organization dealing with the rules of trade between nations. Now, with that in mind, how do you think we can bring back the spirit of Marrakesh today?
I love this concept of the spirit of Marrakesh. I don't know who invented it, but it's very good. And I think it's very true. You said that it represents collaboration. I agree with that. I would say that the reference to sustainable development that was put in December 93 in the preamble of the WTO, where it was said that, contrary to the GATT that did not refer to that, the WTO, one of its overall goals is the protection of sustainable development. I think this is it, or at least one expression of the Marrakesh spirit. And this is true everywhere. So I'm not sure I agree with you with bringing back the spirit of Marrakesh, because to me, the spirit is very much there, including what you mentioned in your previous question, the future of the WTO, because we believe that trade cannot exist without sustainable development and vice versa. There's no possibility of sustainable development without trade, because trade is about exchange. This is the Marrakesh spirit. And when DG Ngozi first arrived and she started talking about equity in distribution, this is the Marrakesh spirit adapted to today's problem. And I often say, a bit in link with your previous question and today, when people say, oh, WTO is maybe outdated, I'm always surprised. I'm a staff, but I always say, look at the parking. The parking has never been so full. There are activities here all the time, even in August. Of course, it's more calm. So the spirit, the Marrakesh spirit, is really the best expression of what the WTO is about, continuing what you said, collaboration. This is what I call also discussions or governance. And I would say we need to continue this movement, this transition from dealing mainly or importantly with dispute, transition towards recognizing that all the new issues that we face don't have clear rules. There may be bits of rules that apply, but first governments need to understand each other's limit, red line capacities, understand the problems, and find new solutions. And for this, WTO is unique. And this is, to me, the Marrakesh spirit, which you call the collaboration applied to today's reality.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really refreshing to hear. And thank you, Gabrielle, for taking the time to be with us
Thank
today.
you for
It's
having
such a
me.
pleasure having you as our first guest on Marrakesh
It's
Coffee.
an honor. I'm delighted.
Thank you.
The love of my life, the WTO.
Thank you so much. We'll continue brewing more conversations with other trade experts, so stay tuned for more.